Coming up next on We Are Marshall Today, students at Marshall University get an up-close look at West Virginia's judicial system. We'll have details on a visit by the West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals.
Plus, as we approach the cold and flu season, we'll have some tips on protecting yourself. Hi, and welcome to this edition of We Are Marshall Today. I'm Leah Edwards.
And I'm Bill Bissett. It's known as the busiest court of its type in the United States, Leah. The West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals is the last stop in this state for litigants.
Bill, the 5 justices review thousands of cases each year, but that doesn't prevent them from taking time to educate their constituents. West Virginia's highest court convened at Marshall University in mid-September as part of the university's celebration of Constitution Week. The justices heard 4 cases during the session, which was open to the public. Justice Menace Ketchum says the visits to cities around the state are part of an effort to educate citizens on the workings of the state's highest court.
It's important because the students and the young people and even adults in this state have no idea how the court operates or what we do. They just have no idea at all. So we think it's important.
Fellow Justice Margaret Peggy Workman agrees that taking the court to the people is imperative in a rural state where travel to the state capitol is difficult for many.
There's a lot of confusion amongst people about the different levels of the court system and exactly what role different courts play. But I think, for example, even if we would have sessions up in the Eastern Panhandle or Northern Panhandle, that would be good because so many people who have appeals to be heard have to pay lawyers to come all the way to Charleston. And for some people, the more far-flung parts of our state, that's a big trip.
Also during the court's visit to Marshall, Chief Justice Brent Benjamin moderated a panel discussion on blogging and the First Amendment. Joining us now is our Dean of the School of Journalism and Mass Communications, Dr. Corley Dennison. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, you're certainly welcome. It's my pleasure to be here.
We just saw a story about the West Virginia State Supreme Court of Appeals visit to Marshall, and we tagged that story with a little bit about the blogging panel that you were part of. So I want to start our discussion there about blogging and the First Amendment and how that dovetails with traditional journalism.
Well, the most difficult part of figuring out the blogs is exactly who is a journalist. So what the panel discussed and what finally they decided is that it goes back to the activities, and there have been several court rulings that if you participate in the activities of a journalist, then you're more likely to be a journalist online rather than someone who's just posting, I'm sitting on the patio, or I went to the beach today, or something like that. So that if you have an individual, even though they may not work for a traditional media organization, perhaps they're doing research, they're writing an opinion column, they're doing some investigative reporting, they write a story that they disseminate for the public good, then that person is a journalist regardless of whether or not they're in a traditional journalistic organization.
The whole concept of blogging, what is blogging? Where did that term come from?
Well, the term came from weblog, which was created around 1999, I think. You had hypertext and things like that had been created prior to that, but around 1999, and I can't remember the person's name, but he was out in California, and he actually created the ability for people to be able to post things online and have people reply to columns, that kind of thing. And so it started out really almost as a sort of a personal information. There's a commercial, a texting commercial, where a dad's sitting there and goes, "I'm sitting on the patio." And so that's what people were doing in the beginning with it. But pretty soon people started discovering, hey, you know what? We can post information out there and people will read it. People will Google for topics and they will find us and they will read it. And once that happened, you started getting people who had political agendas getting involved with posting stories. And then you had people that really wanted to pursue a discussion about this topic or that topic. And then once the politicians tagged into it into 2004, it was alive and well, and not everybody seemed to be doing it, but a lot of people seemed to be doing it, especially younger people. And so the blogs have really become an important part of the journalistic environment.
We'll go on and talk a little bit about journalism education in just a second, but how does a layperson, how does a person out in the public that is Googling certain topics, how do they discern what is objective journalism and what is someone's opinion in a blog?
That's the rub. It becomes really hard to discern whether or not, as a matter of fact, Mark Bowden, who did some investigative reporting for the Philadelphia Inquirer, he says that we have entered into a post-journalism world, and that what happens is that we have people that are out there posting because they have an agenda. And an interesting example of that is the Sonia Sotomayor confirmation process. And there's this interdependency that is developed between the blogs and the traditional media now. But a guy named Morgan Richmond in his basement out in California happened to be watching the George Stephanopoulos talk show on ABC on a Sunday morning and heard him say that Sonia Sotomayor might be one of the nominees that Barack Obama might name to the Supreme Court. So he started doing research on her, started looking around at university websites, found this little tidbit where she says that the lower courts could possibly make law rather than interpret law. And then he found a text of a speech that she made where she said a Latina woman could do a better job on the bench than a white male. He posted those. Someone called the Judicial Confirmation Network picked it up, and when Barack Obama announced that he was nominating Sotomayor to the Supreme Court, the Confirmation Network gave that to the networks, MSNBC, CNN, Fox, and the traditional network news, ABC, NBC, CBS. They all ran the exact same 11-second clip that was been posted on YouTube by Morgan Richmond and his site Verum Serum. So, you know, it's hard to tell what's agenda-driven and what's not. Usually, that's why in colleges now we're teaching courses like media literacy to maybe get students to be more aware of what is agenda-driven and what is more journalism.
Well, you touched on what we're teaching in journalism schools today. Tell me a little bit about how that education is changing and how it's keeping up with technology.
You know, that's a really hard thing. We're grappling with that. Our faculty, we're having meetings now, but we've done things like, for example, we have a class, digital imaging. We no longer have news photography. We have digital imaging. We teach the students how to shoot video. We teach them how to work with Final Cut Pro. We teach them how to work with Flash. We have a class, web strategies, as well as web design, which we're encouraging our students to take. So what's happening in journalism is that originally everyone thought that convergence would mean that radio and TV and newspapers would all start cooperating and create this new media or new medium. But instead what's happened is everybody's vertically integrating, and so you're getting newspapers that are posting video, you're getting TV stations that are putting up text, and so it's very important for the students not to really be caught in a silo of I'm a print journalist or I'm a broadcast journalist. They need to know how to be able to write, they need to know how to be able to do video, they need to know how to edit, they need to know how to post to the web. So we're trying to make sure that all of our students, regardless of their area of interest, know how to work across the various media.
So they really need to be cross-trained.
Right, they really need to be cross-trained.
I think that in the field that we experience that on a daily basis. So what you're saying is you're teaching them to keep up with these technologies and to work across the board, but the bottom line is they still have to know how to write.
But the bottom line is they still have to know how to write, and like I say, regardless, I think TV stations are dealing with this because reporters who used to only have to write for the teleprompter are now having to write stories the same as a print journalist and post that on their site. I think, and someone from the newspaper industry may come out and yell at me after I say this, but I think that television stations are doing a little bit better job online than the newspapers. The television stations are posting video, they're posting the text. Newspapers are experimenting with video, but not all of them have it down yet, but they're working on it. Mm-hmm. And you know, we've talked to people in the newspaper industry that say that their reporters are getting up to speed with working with Final Cut Pro and that kind of thing. And so it's possible somewhere down the line you may have a company that just identifies itself as a media company, and they do a website, they post things on YouTube, they have a video feed. They're doing all kinds, and I think that's probably where we're headed, is that we're going to media companies who have multiple platforms rather than newspapers, television stations, radio stations.
Very interesting. Always interesting to talk to you and see what's happening with the School of Journalism and students and the whole industry.
It's an interesting time.
It is. Thanks for being here today.
You're certainly welcome.
Coming up next, more of We Are Marshall Today. Stay with us.
Marshall University has done so very much for me. There's more than Matthew McConaughey, and if you ask me what I'll say. Listen, coming from 6 hours away, Marshall University has become a home away from home for me. It's an incredible place to learn, and take it from me, there's never a dull moment.
A state-of-the-art broadband connection will mean better health care for thousands in southwestern West Virginia. U.S. Senator Jay Rockefeller joined Marshall President Dr. Stephen J. Kopp and others for the announcement in Charleston. The new project is part of a federal initiative aimed at helping rural areas have increased access to health care.
It means a lot for Marshall and with the whole community. We're making a very strong hub of healthcare in the Huntington area. St. Mary's Cabell and our medical school already have electronic medical records. They also do clinical research, and this hub really, what's good for the city becomes very good for the community in the rural areas.
The Metro Fiber build includes Marshall University, the Joan C. Edwards School of Medicine, St. Mary's Medical Center, and Cabell Huntington Hospital. The project carries an $8.4 million price tag, which is being administered through the Federal Communications Commission.
Marshall University President Stephen Kopp delivered his annual State of the University address in late September during the annual faculty meeting. Kopp says while Marshall University has increased its enrollment, there are still serious concerns over the economy and its dollar impact on higher education. Dr. Cam Brammer, who serves as Faculty Senate Chair, delivered the State of the Faculty address as well. New faculty and administrators were introduced during the meeting also. Two former congressmen visited Marshall's Huntington campus recently as part of a national effort which encourages students to become civic leaders. Former Representatives Ed Foreman and Ed Jenkins both say civic engagement is good for students and the country.
Therefore, for the stability of a democracy, I think that it is extremely important that we have young people participating in actual government.
There's nothing more important to us in our lives than our government, whether it's local, state, or federal, whether you're an office holder or whether you are a concerned citizen. You need to be aware of what's going on. What you're doing here at Marshall University and what's being done at other universities is great in helping people to become concerned and involved in their government.
The Congress to Campus program has been sending bipartisan representatives to college campuses since 1996.
Deciding on a college major is not always an easy choice. There are hundreds of options, and for some students, the decision process is a difficult one. That's why Marshall University offers its annual Majors, Minors, and More fair every fall.
We have a lot of students who, when they come in, they don't yet know what they want to do, and even if they kind of maybe know, they sometimes change their mind later. So that's what this is for, to let them find out more details about what they're in, see if they want to stay there, or if they're not decided, to get information on what they might be interested in.
Advisor Patricia Gallagher says students with questions about a major should give her office a call at 696-3464. A recent study by Marshall University researchers suggests that the use of the common pain reliever acetaminophen may help prevent some issues associated with aging. Dr. Eric Blau and his team looked at how acetaminophen may affect the regulation of an enzyme that is linked to age-associated muscle loss. The lab work, which was published in a recent journal, is the first study to show that acetaminophen slows muscle loss in animals.
Health and safety officials at Marshall University have been busy for months planning for this year's particular cold and flu season.
That's right, Leah. H1N1 has been in the media and heard about across the nation. But as Dr. Christopher Swindell reports, Marshall University has its own plan of attack.
Health officials say H1N1 is like other types of influenza in that it is spread person to person. They agree that preventive measures like good hand washing and staying away from infected individuals are very effective tools.
One of the things that we try to let students know is that if they're within a 6-foot proximity of someone with that or with flu-like symptoms, whether it's a flu or H1N1, that if that person coughs or sneezes, it can be spread through the air, through droplets, if they're within a 6-foot range. And so we're trying to make students aware of that. That's something that maybe if they notice someone with flu-like symptoms, that they're to try to stay out of that range, which is just one of the many preventative measures I think that's out there.
John Yawn is Director of Resident Services at Marshall University. He says close living quarters on college campuses mean that any communicable disease can spread quickly. Marshall University has implemented several precautionary measures to combat the flu. Personal hand sanitizers have been distributed, educational posters are everywhere, and hand sanitizing stations have been placed in many buildings. There's even been an additional safety in-service.
We actually had training with our custodial staff and our maintenance staff and our department staff about appropriate hand washing and other techniques to really preventative measures from catching anything related to H1N1 or even the seasonal flu that's now approaching.
Yawn says students, faculty, and staff who have questions about H1N1 should access the web for more information.
Probably one of the biggest things I think that's the most important is looking at the website for the information from the CDC to learn about the virus and how they contract it and how they can't contract it, because I think sometimes misinformation can lead to either panic or things being said that are not true, and so we want to make sure there aren't any mistruths out there and that students understand exactly what they can do.
The H1N1 vaccine should be available sometime in the next few weeks. For We Are Marshall Today, I'm Dr. Christopher Swindell.
Joining us now is Brian Carrico. He's the Director of Health and Safety here at Marshall University. Brian, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
I know, like a lot of media reports, we at We Are Marshall Today just did a story on H1N1, something we've all heard a great deal about over this year. Marshall University has clearly had some cases of flu, perhaps not necessarily diagnosed H1N1. What are we doing? And more importantly, before you tell us what we're doing, what kind of procedures do we have in place for this kind of flu?
Well, Bill, this goes a long ways back. We started with the community back 4 years ago looking at some summit planning and just flu pandemic plannings for the tri-state area with all the local authorities. We sat down and actually looked at what should we do in case something like this were to ever happen. So
what local authorities are we talking? Health
We're
Department?
talking with the Cabell County Health Department, the Cabell Wayne Emergency Planning Committee, and several other agencies within our area. And within those plannings, we actually were able to get some good information. We've implemented a lot of those practices here today. We have done a lot of preventive measures and a lot of proactive things in actually looking at H1N1 and flu-like symptoms throughout the community. We have actually put postings out reminding everyone to wash their hands. We've actually made available personal hand sanitizers to all the faculty, community, our students and staff. We have actually put those out on campus, made those available. We have given our custodial staff some extra training on, what do I clean, how do I clean, what surfaces should I clean. So those have all been some proactive measures that we've taken. We've actually partnered with the Cabell Huntington Health Department with some vaccination clinics. We actually had a seasonal flu vaccination clinic here on campus.
Very successful, of course.
Very successful. They actually went through their vaccination within a couple of days here that they had allotted, and it went well. People were in line, and that's just really more evidence that the word is out. People are looking to take preventive measures, and that's a good thing when a lot of people start showing up for vaccination clinics. Your elderly population usually are the ones that will show up for vaccinations. They are prepared for those things, know to get them every year. When you start looking at the younger community, sometimes they don't feel that there's a risk for their population. But now when you see that age group is making it to these clinics, that's just evidence that our publications are out. People are taking this serious, and it's the flu. We treat the flu, we deal with flu every year. It just happens to be a new H1N1 strain that we're looking at this year. And with all these preventive measures we've put in place, hopefully we'll get through this year with minimal cases of the flu virus here on campus.
Excellent. Well, Brian, I know that you and I work together on a number of different things, and you have your undergraduate and master's degree in safety, as well as working on, your doctorate, I believe, in higher ed administration. With that kind of background, how does one prepare for emergencies like a flu? I mean, given your education, your experience, I know you're the first person to really serve in this capacity. How does one prepare for what could be an emergency, a disease outbreak like you talked about? What have we done as a university? I mean, I'm aware, but our viewers may not be, to prepare for basically the unforeseen.
Well, Bill, it goes back to planning and education. We have, like I said, we've been working on this for years now with our plans. We have not only worked in preparedness for communicable diseases or communicable illnesses like the flu, but we have also had plans in place for any other type of emergency we could experience here on campus, such as flood, fire, tornadoes, anything that could affect our campus. When you look at going even back to Hurricane Katrina, and we saw what kind of damage that did, and there were a lot of people affected with that, you know, we started looking at our plans again closer, as most people did, start reviewing their plans. We have really an effective plan out there to handle any type of emergency that would affect this campus. We have that in place, and then the education, we have those available in flip charts that we've made available on campus. We have a website now available that's readily accessible to everyone, that anyone can go on and access this information. What do I do? When do I need to exercise these plans, and what do I do when it's time for that? They're there. It's in plain and simple format for people to access. And it goes back to training. We do trainings annually, monthly. There's all kinds of different trainings we have, not only with students, with our RA staffs and our RDs, but with our workers out here on campus, administration. So everybody should be seeing this information and make them feel more comfortable whenever we have times like these.
Well, and I think obviously in my business, communicating to people quickly in a crisis is always important. I know we have a new emergency alert system, which I believe has been used twice in minor emergencies and then once tested here. There's actually the week of before the shooting of this episode. Tell us about what that does. I mean, the ability to touch everyone quickly in a multifaceted way. How does that assist in your efforts?
Well, Bill, it's really good to let everybody know what's happening. Just like you said, communication is essential. Whenever this is a tool that will allow us to get real-time information to people that are wondering what's going on. When you have people out on a scene actually assessing, when we're out assessing what is actually going on, we're able to make a call back, and the communications efforts can get that information out to our students, faculty, staff in a real-time sense, and that lessens any panic, that creates a calmness when people know what's happening, know what's going on. It's been a real effective tool to use. Now everyone is electronically in touch. It's easy for someone to get a text message. I can get a hold of my family now even quicker on a text message than I can pick the phone up and call them.
Yeah. And I think our students and our faculty and staff are used to that communication, and thus far I think we've seen it even more effective than it was in the past.
Right.
Very good. Well, maybe a good thing in closing, I mean, Marshall is our Huntington campus is all of our campuses are very, very safe places. Given someone who this is their expertise, what do you attribute that to?
Bill, there's a few things we can attribute that to, but really it starts out with the people you have in place and the facilities you have in place. It starts with the facility, with the design of a facility. We have many buildings here, a lot of offerings here at Marshall University. We have very qualified staff that's in charge and trades that are out here putting these buildings together. We're looking at safety issues right from the get-go. Before anything even goes into place, we're looking at safety features. What can we do to make this more safe? And then you have the people actually behind it too. Really, safety is an attitude and in your behaviors of people, and very critical. We have very good staff here and people in place that making those things happen.
Excellent.
And you know, we know how to do things safe, but we all have to be reminded sometimes whenever we go to do something.
Sure.
And it's just that mental, as we train people, train them what to look for, and put those things in place, and that's how we get a safe environment.
Excellent. Well, Brian, we appreciate all your work for Marshall University, and thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And now, before we go to the break, let's meet another member of the Marshall University alumni family. Susan Nicholas earned her bachelor's degree from Marshall in 1990. She is currently the weekend anchor at WSAZ News Channel 3 and the author of a children's book. She currently resides in Huntington with her husband Doug Korstanji and has 2 daughters. Susan Nicholas, another Marshall University graduate, spreading the word about the herd.
Oh, hey, Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Hey.
Where have you been?
I lost my cat.
Oh, that's not right.
Yeah, so I made this cat magnet to try and get him back.
Cool. Does it work?
Kinda.
Nice.
Yeah, but that's not my cat. Gotta keep working on it. See ya.
See ya.
Anything's possible. Keep thinking. Get started on your own inventions or just play some games at inventnow.org.
Marshall University recently celebrated Constitution Week, and along with that, the birthday of our namesake, the great Chief Justice John Marshall.
Photojournalist Mike Powers captured these moments on campus.
It's something like celebrating a birthday of your family member. You know, to get where you're going, you have to know where you came from. It's something like celebrating a birthday of your family member. You know, to get where you're going, you have to know where you came from. And as a family, it's like, you know, knowing who your grandparents are, your great-grandparents are. And from that, you can really, you know, get the whole feel of our campus and know, you know, why Marshall is Marshall.
There's something remarkable about him. He has a winning combination of real public service abilities combined with a personal modesty, which is very refreshing. And I have found that he actually improves the more you investigate him. He's a great role model for public service. He was a legislator. He was in the military service during the Revolution, a veteran. And he's also a role model for a great justice. The great Chief Justice, in fact, is one of his nicknames. So if you want to know how to comport yourself in the legal field, look to Marshall as both an appellate lawyer and as a federal judge. If you want to know how to serve your country, think of his Army service, which had a formative impact on his subsequent political career. And if you want to know how to conduct yourself as a virtuous citizen, look to John Marshall. His personal character, his traits are worthy of emulation. He was a very fine role model as a husband and as a community leader and as a good neighbor.
I really feel that they can take home a lot of knowledge home, you know, about the institution, about John Marshall. Even, of course, quoits, you know, the game that he used to play. Different things like that, I think, get our students energized, you know, about wanting to come to school and furthering their education.
Great story. More about John Marshall in future episodes of We Are Marshall Today.
I'm Leah Edwards. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Bill Bissett. See you next time.